Hey everybody, welcome to the Song Revolution podcast, brought to you by Nashville Christian Songwriters. Nashville Christian Songwriters exists to empower Christian songwriters worldwide. I'm John Chisum, and this podcast exists to bring you valuable songwriting insights, inspiration, interviews, and just all around good fun with some of the greatest songwriters, producers, arrangers, artists, and creatives, and beyond. You can find out a whole lot more about us at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. All right, everybody, John Chisum here, sitting in the Integrity Music offices we're Brentwood, really not Franklin, but who's counting, with the lovely and talented Alisa Turner. Yes. Good to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
What are you drinking? Is that hot chocolate?
It's hot chocolate, yes.
But it's a hot day here.
I know, which makes it even more difficult to drink, but I'm pretty committed to it. But everybody else has their hot coffee during the day.
Right,
so
right. I'm guilty.
It's a little sweeter, hot chocolate, but
there you go.
I love it.
There you go. Wow, well, I'm very excited to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And today is the day that your self-titled debut Integrity Music album hits pre-sales on like iTunes and wherever else they do such.
Yep.
But releasing on August 25th, I think is right. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. So you and I ran into each other briefly at the Word Writers' Rooms a couple months ago, and you must have been writing with somebody important.
Yeah, Tony Wood.
Tony,
one of my
a couple of songs on this record with Tony. He's going to be on an upcoming podcast.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's the craziest thing, a little off topic, but I went down to Word Friday to record a podcast with Tony, and there was a jackhammer outside the building, and it was going and it's like,
it'd be hard to focus.
Crummy couldn't do it, and it was getting on the recording, so we couldn't do it. Tony's the best.
He cracks me up. He is every single co-writer I've ever sat in, he brings a sandwich, and he's got his LaCroix soda. Sometimes he abandons the sandwich if someone persuades us to go out to eat.
Exactly.
He always has a sandwich, so I always ask him, "What's in your sandwich today?"
I won't steal what's in the sandwich today. Well, I won't steal the thunder from Tony's podcast, but 29 number one records with him. So here's praying and hoping for some more off of your record.
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
Him and Michael Farron, they make a phenomenal writing team.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll get into that in just a little while about your co-writers and some of the lyrics that are amazing. I've been reviewing your record for the last couple of days, and I love it. It's so honest and hopeful, and yet there's truth. It's authentic, and I love all that. You sound absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Produced by Michael Farron, who is amazing, and it's just so wonderful.
Thank you.
So why don't we just kind of start back a little bit for the people who don't know you, don't know you've been an indie artist for a long time, you've written for a long time, and this is the first big deal.
Yep.
So take us back a little bit kind of to your, where you've come from, where you grew up, just,
Yeah, a little bit. So I was born in 1983.
Yay. I'd been married 3 years by then, so.
That's hilarious. I was a little baby. So it's super random, but I was born in Hawaii. I don't know if that technically makes me Hawaiian, but my dad was a worship pastor, so that was just happened to be one of the churches he was pastoring in. So that's where I was born. And so he was a worship pastor. So we would spend about like 3 or 4 years in a church and kind of or he would kind of get a worship ministry going that maybe wasn't really happening before I got there. Get it up and running, and then it was like the Lord would open another church, another door for us to kind of go do the same thing. So we moved around quite a bit growing up, East Coast and West Coast, but eventually landed in North Carolina. So that's what even though Franklin, I've been here for 4.5 years, and it feels like home, but my family's back in North Carolina. So
gotcha.
Yeah, I grew up just surrounded by, I was PK, so surrounded by church. Very, very, very blessed to have known and learned about the Lord at such a young age.
Yeah.
I do not take that for granted. I know a lot of people, that's not their story. So I'm thankful for that, especially for things that I went through in later life. Just thankful I knew him and still knowing him.
Right.
Right.
But you lost your dad.
I did lose
my
dad. Yeah. I was,
age.
So all throughout, I started writing when I was real young, and I wasn't that good at it, but I kept at it. But that kind of dream kind of led me to come to Nashville, and it was real sudden when I came here. I basically said, at the end of the day, I tried college, and at the end of the day, I was always like, you know what? My heart is to sit at this piano and share these songs. So I packed up my car and called my dad on the way and said, hey, I'm going to Nashville. And so he booked a hotel for me, and that's where I spent my first couple weeks in Nashville until I found a place to stay. And I was here for about a year, and then kind of around that, it was in January, and I was on the phone with him. And there was this restaurant that we went to solely just for the biscuits. Nothing else was that exciting. It was just the biscuits, and
biscuits.
I know
biscuits can be exciting
can do
in
it
Nashville.
for you.
I
You know, certain restaurants just have that one thing you want, and like
right.
you may purchase something else, but you're really there for that one
here
thing.
For that.
So I was just on the phone with him, and it was just I talked to him all day, every day. I was such a daddy's girl, and then it was just within an hour later, I got a phone call at that. At first, I didn't know what was going on. There was a stranger on the end of my phone and said, "Are you a relative of Ross Turner?" I said, "Yes," and nobody would tell me what was going on. And so I kind of had to wait. I was in the mall at that point, and as I was leaving the mall, and I kind of had a horrible feeling in my stomach, my brother called and said that my dad had a heart attack.
Oh my!
And it was just crazy to think I was just talking to him on the phone. And it was one of the first most traumatic things in my life. Been through other things before that, but nothing like that where it was like the ground was taken out from underneath me.
Sure.
I remember I pushed the doors open of the mall. I was walking out and I fell on the ground as he was telling me this. And these strangers, they picked me up and they walked me to my car. And I can't imagine what was going through their mind. They're trying to make sure I was okay, and I'm just absolute denial. I just could not believe it. And that denial lasted for quite a while. It was just heartbreaking and too much for me to accept that
Sure.
everything was about to change. It's quite a season of grief.
And you were only 20.
Yeah. Yes, I was 20.
Which is your child.
Yeah, I knew
and a daddy's girl.
Big time.
And then someone so important to you
Yeah.
was taken suddenly away.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Yeah.
That's rough.
I after kind of going through that, I moved back home, and stayed there for about a year, and our church was wonderful. I mean, they just surrounded us. I have to say that I never walked a day of it on my own, between friends and family and our church and the Lord. So I'm very thankful for that. There's still parts of that first year where I isolated myself, and it's when you're grieving. I mean, you do need that space and time sometimes. Everybody has their own way of going through that.
Sure.
But there is a point of where if you're really pushing people away, and you're just really isolating yourself, what I will say is that the devil just loves it. He loves it when you're isolated, because you're not influenced by anything, and he can kind of mess things up for you. So I just battled a lot during that first year, and but finally kind of came through it. And honestly, it's taken all these years since then just for me to have peace in my heart about it.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be a journey all my days, because I'll just never stop missing him.
Yeah.
But at the end of that first year after losing him, I really just, that fire within me to keep chasing music and these dreams, that's what my dad would have wanted me to do. So I packed up my blue Honda CR-V, put my keyboard in the back, and I just started to travel all over the country, and reached out to just random churches that I may have known through growing up, or MySpace was right around that time. It was really, It was really coming into place. So that actually really helped me, because that was kind of one of the first things where, other than a website, where artists could kind of interact and stuff with, whether you're building a fan base or musical community. And so that really helped carry me quite a bit, and stayed on the road for a long time. And I played everything. I mean, churches, bars, clubs, coffee houses, a polka festival.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody would invite me in, I would play. And the strange thing is, despite all the different environments, I always played the same songs, the same kind of set. I never really did covers. It was always about sharing my story, which in certain environments or venues worked better than others. But somebody always was moved, and always created a dialogue between me and someone at the end of the night, just to talk through life. And I love that. I love music, but I love people even more, and the way music has been able to connect me to them.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And everybody has grief, whether it's a tremendous loss like that or whatever it is.
It can be job loss or just, there are so many different things that life can throw at you that,
right.
Yeah.
Well, getting to know you just a little bit through your press materials, you've had more than your fair share, I think, in grief and loss and some of the trials that, and my heart just rises in love and compassion for you. And again, when we get into Alisa's lyrics here in a moment, you guys are listening, you're just going to be amazed. I wish I could play the songs for you, but I can't because of copyright stuff. But you go out and pre-order it.
Pre-order and you'll get at least two of my favorites, actually, right away if you pre-order. So,
yeah. So, but for everything that you've walked through, again, the lyrics are not morose. Yeah. And they're not filled with self-pity, right.
Which
that's a big pet peeve for me as I work with the songwriters that I do. I did a post, in fact, yesterday,
cool.
And it's like, guys, how many songs are we going to open with I'm broken, but you're great,
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's true, but...
It's true, but there's more to it than that.
Exactly. So I want to get into that in just a little bit, and I don't want to keep bringing up all the bad things that have happened in your life, but that's kind of the backdrop of your ministry, if I'm perceiving it correctly.
Absolutely.
Because you struggle with Lymes disease for a long time.
Long time,
6 years bedridden? Did I read that correct?
Yeah.
And here you are, this gorgeous, tall, lanky, beautiful.
I had a good workout this morning. I got a little sunshine.
Good for you. You're glowing and beautiful.
I worked hard to kind of get back. Yeah, I got, so it's just so crazy to me. I got a tick bite, a very small little bug bite, and I was right around 8 to 9 years old. When it happened, and I wasn't really sick for a long time, so it was so difficult for them to figure out. All these different symptoms crept up over such a long span of time. Typically when you get a tick bite and you have Lyme disease, you'll get flu-like symptoms, and sometimes you get a big red rash, but you just don't always. So we just had no direction on what was going on, and so it took a very long time. It basically took till I was just, I was losing my life at the worst of it. It had kind of atrophied all my muscles, so I was bedridden. I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, I had a feeding tube, I couldn't swallow. Seizures and tremors and pain, and it just really ravaged my body. And by the time they found out what it was just, I'm not gonna say it was too late, but it was. I was quite close to passing. I remember my doctor brought my family in and kind of. I didn't say it would happen, but that just wasn't looking good. And so it was it's a long journey.
Bless your heart.
And it even kind of made the losses in my life just more difficult to even process. And it's not quite over. I'm much, much, much better. I went through years and years of IV treatments and just all kinds of different approaches to help the body heal. And so the goal now is just to keep it in remission, which I'm close to it, and it sometimes feels like a full-time job to kind of just stay healthy, but it's worth it to get to do things like this today, talk to you, and there's a motto I've just said throughout: whatever it takes, I'll do whatever it takes. So and I have this little tattoo on my wrist, this fight. So for all the years I just laid in bed, it was very few things I would kind of hear or look at throughout the day, but that was one of them. It's just keep fighting.
What do you do when you are bedridden for 6 years?
Yeah, it was. I was for the first 2 years of that real sick period. Every now and then I was still able to go out on the road. I had a road manager who would drive. She made meals. She did everything.
So you were already singing and performing.
So I was out on the road, and it ended up being that we kind of knew that we had known I was sick. Nobody knew what was wrong, and it kind of got to a point where I would do my shows, but I was just forgetting all the lyrics. My speech was getting really slurred. So it was just getting to the point where even though there was such an adrenaline and such a joy to be able to do that, so I always felt like it kept me stronger. So I didn't want to let go, but it got to a point where I couldn't even perform or do these nights of worship and music, and so I kind of went home and was like, okay, we are really going to figure this out. And it took a lot longer than I thought it would. Yeah. So I'm thankful for my mom. Gosh, my mom was just and is such a champion of rooting me on and figuring things out when I couldn't, and she just wouldn't give up on finding answers and stuff. It was crazy that I kind of met my husband kind of in the midst of all that through previous years of touring through Houston a lot. He was Houston-based and loved music and singer-songwriter stuff, so we connected through music, and we got married in April, and it was really like May of that, basically that next month, is when I had a feeding tube put in and was on nurse care and just a bit of a vegetable. So he's a good man.
Love. He is a good man.
He's a good man.
And look at you now. I mean, he has such a beautiful reward.
Thank you.
What's his name?
Jaime.
Jaime?
Yeah, it looks like Jamie, and he gets called Jamie about
That's right.
99 times a day, but he's a good sport about it.
Hey, Jamie.
he'll respond just like that.
That would be Jaime.
Yes. But he's a good man, good heart.
And you've been married how long?
Yeah, so this past April was 5 years.
Okay,
yes, yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Is he still doing music too?
So he never did music. He just loved and appreciated.
Gotcha,
so he was like, he's the ultimate fan of music. Like, he goes to more concerts than I go to. I'm just saying. He can't get enough of it. But he is a manager of Discount Tire, and Discount Tire in the Texas, particularly in the Houston area, is just everywhere.
Right.
You can be in one store and see another one across the highway.
Funny. Like McDonald's.
It's just like, it's just there's so many big trucks in Houston and so much traffic and stuff, so they're everywhere. And he started that job when I think he was about like 15, 16, like when you can first get your first job, and he's been with them ever since, and they've been very good to us.
What a great man.
Yes.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Now, I feel horrible bringing this up, but it's in your press materials that you and Jaime lost a child.
Yes. Yeah, it was...
you make it hard on interviewers.
I know. It's a lot. It's a lot to cover. It's a lot to cover, but a lot of life happened, particularly in my 20s. I'm in my 30s, early 30s now, but it was such a surprise. For how sick I had gotten, they kind of told me it would be impossible to get pregnant.
Yeah, right.
Just to not even really expect that my body wouldn't be able to carry. So it was a wonderful yet slightly frightening, shocking surprise to know that we were pregnant. And I was real sick right off the bat with the pregnancy. Was kind of back in bed and really had only had the feeding tube out of my stomach for maybe like 6 months at that point. So it was a real fragile time in life. And it was right around our 12 week ultrasound. I remember laying on the table and they were checking the baby out. The thing was on my belly, and I was watching the doctor, and I could just see his face go white. It was just real sudden, and it was just it was such a little thing, but it was, when you go through trauma, you just remember the strangest details. Like when I got that phone call about my dad, I was in a Lady Foot Locker. I just remember the strangest things, the littlest things. Sometimes you just don't want to forget it all. But yeah, his face went white, and he walked out of the room. And then when he walked back in, he said, your child, though he is safe and sound inside your belly, when he would be born, that he would die. He had a birth defect that was 100% fatal, and it's called anencephaly. And basically, it's just where a real small part of the skull just didn't quite form. And in my mind, when he's talking about this, I'm thinking, you see doctors even take babies out of the womb, do surgery, and put them back.
Wow,
there's just miraculous things that they do these days with medicine. So I'm like, surely they can find something to cover that, or... but it's just the way the brain stem and the skull form. It was just one of those birth defects that was completely fatal. And so he had never had a patient who would want to carry their child to full term with this situation, that he thought termination was the best. And it was just, my mind was swimming. I was still real sick from the pregnancy. I was still kind of shocked I was even pregnant.
Yeah.
We hadn't told any friends or family yet because we wanted to get to a certain point, and so it was a lot of news to walk out of there with. I told him I almost for a minute thought, okay, so I'm supposed to terminate because it was for my best interest or something. I really had a hard time understanding what was happening, what's going to happen, and what I'm supposed to do. So we walked out of the building, we got in the car, and we sat over Chinese food with tears dripping down on our plates, and it was just shock for a while. I mean, we were trying to avoid the Houston traffic, so we just stayed in the city for a while and tried to just do things that not take our mind off of it, but just almost a little distraction so we could breathe. We started to finally call our families, and it was hard because you sit there and say, we're pregnant, but we just found out the child has a birth defect. And it was hard for them to understand that. They thought, so you miscarried, or it was just really hard to explain that and upsetting. And I remember I was in a Barnes & Noble, and I called my mom, and I said, and this was a few weeks into trying to make this decision, and I asked her, what she would have done, and I think thinking through the process of one way or another, it really came down to, I knew that they would have to stop his heart if they terminated, and I just had this feeling that I'd still be alive after that, but mine would just never be the same, and I didn't know that I could live with that all my days. I had to figure out what in an impossible situation, what will I have most peace about, and it was such a shift in my perspective. I thought, I have a son right now. He's in my belly, and he was so little then, you can't feel him move, but I know he's there. And I thought, sometimes I think about, if you had, I know a lot of times grandparents or things like that who may be terminal and they have 6 months to live. It's would you rush that just to get it over with, or would you want to spend every moment making memories and telling them you love them? And so I thought, I want to make the most of this, even if it is just while he's in the womb. And so we chose to to this day, I honor his death. I knew, I had peace I knew that the Lord was going to take him home, but I chose to focus so much more on embracing his life, even as short as it was here on earth. And so we made just a lot of memories while I was pregnant, and went in for a C-section, and they put me under just for health stuff. And so I kind of assumed that by the time I'd wake up, I may not see him alive because they passed pretty quickly. But they woke me up pretty quickly and rolled me back into the room and put him on, just kind of laid him on my chest, and he lived 71 minutes. And it was just kind of the best and worst day of my parents' life.
I need some tissue.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What a story.
Yeah, so his name was London, and I know where he is. There's a lot of hard days, but I really, the Lord gave me a lot of peace about that. My husband struggled a lot with depression that following year, and so I felt like the Lord really went above and beyond. He didn't miraculously heal my son, but I mean, it just doesn't always turn out the way that we want it, but the Lord still provided all throughout that. He never let me walk a day of it by myself. So it's because I've had that question a lot of are you angry at God that he took your son? I was like, the Lord didn't take my son. Anencephaly took my son. It was a birth defect. The Lord has taken him home, let him be in a place where I'll see him again. That's awesome. I wish he was here. I mean, I've heard some people say, I wouldn't change anything about my story because it's made me who I am today. But I'm like, I would change that. Yeah. I would love for my dad and my son to be here. But if they can't be here, then I want them there, and I don't want to see them again. So, yeah.
Wow, girl, you have messed me up. What a story. What a beautiful spirit you are.
Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Well, you put all that in your press material, so I had to bring it up.
Yes, yeah. So. No, I want to share it. It's hard stuff, but it's life.
Is.
A lot of people go through hard stuff.
Right.
So.
Now, do you wind up talking about this when you do ministry?
I do. I spend a lot of the time up on the stage or even in stuff like this. I mean, I share a lot of my story. A lot of the songs really come from that. Writing songs and music has been such a healing part of this journey. I always wonder if the Lord really purposefully gave me such a burning desire, almost annoying at times, to keep pursuing music and keep writing just because He knew I'd need this.
Yeah. Wow. And a lot of other people are, I mean, I'm already so blessed by listening, but, hearing your story and just being moved by the power of faith and perseverance in the face of the things that we just don't understand and we can't understand. And people are so quick to paste labels on God did this, the devil did that, or whatever, right? And not to do a deep dive into theology here, but you get to be a living testimony now of the fact that you can go deep into worship. There was one phrase, I love so many phrases about this. And so maybe this would be a good moment to move over into some of the songs and the release. You said, my life and my story are messy.
Yeah.
There are days when all I can do is keep lifting up my hands in desperation and in worship.
Yeah.
I know the hard parts of life well, and I can see and sense when someone else is going through it.
Yes.
The best way I know how to lead is by example, so I just worship. That's all I know to do. That's the part I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Wow. So how did this record come about? How did this thing all come about?
So about a year and a half after we lost our son, we kind of got our feet under us again, and I still, after all this time, just, like I said, it was almost annoying, this fire within me just to keep pursuing music. So I was like, you know what, I've gotten older now, I don't know that anything is really ever going to happen. I'd been through so many almost deals or even signed, and then it still kind of fizzled, and but there was just such a joy. There was just such a something drawing me to it. And from all those years back when I lived in Nashville, when I was younger, I always knew that this was going to be home for me. I had such a peace in my heart. Even if it wasn't about music, there's just something about the community here. It's a beautiful place to live. So it's just, I knew I wanted to come back. So my husband and I packed up. We had 3 dogs, packed them all in the car, and drove here, and we ended up in a complex in Franklin, and right around that area was Michael Farron's church, Gateway Franklin. And a few years before that, I had written with Michael just on a writing trip, and his studio was right behind the church. So when it came time for our first Sunday, I thought, there's so many awesome churches in the Franklin area. But I was like, I remember this one church near this place I was writing, and I briefly met Michael, and through writing, I was like, I just had a feeling. I was like, let's just go check it out. I can worship the Lord in any building, any church. I wanted to find somewhere that my husband, more importantly, was going to be really comfortable with, and so we went, and we never left. It was just, it doesn't always happen that way. You can try different churches for a year, but it was definitely, as we were making that move, it was definitely a prayer of mine that we would be able to find quickly a church and a community to plug into. We're still pretty raw from life, so I knew that it was going to take time for us to just figure out how to keep moving forward. And so we started at that church, and I wasn't leading worship there or anything. I was still just doing kind of an independent. I'd go out on the road and do small shows, even lots of house shows, and very storytellers in my music, and which still am and will always do. So it was probably about a year and a half into being at Gateway Franklin, and Michael had written a song called No More Chains, and they wanted to pitch it for Kim Walker, and they just needed kind of a powerhouse kind of voice. And so I get a phone call, and he's like, hey, would you come and just demo this just so we can pitch it. I was like, yes, I will be there.
In a word.
Absolutely. So
you need me like now?
Yeah, pretty much. It was the next morning. I walked in and there wasn't even anything to listen to. I stood at the mic and we kind of went section by section, and I had the lyrics, and Michael would kind of give me a roundabout kind of it sounds like this. Sing it like this. There was no work tape. No work tape for demo to listen to. So he would kind of show me what the melody was, and then I would sing it back to him, and then the demo of it turned out so well that he ended up playing it at staff meeting, and then the pastor was like, hey, let's have her come and lead that at our church. And that just busted down doors and walls for me. And it was it was so funny because it was right around that time that I had been, going out on the weekends, doing shows, open mic nights, just anything I can to just keep that momentum going and keep enjoying what I was doing. But I remember getting to a point where I was like, Lord, this, I just want this so bad. I don't even know why. I know I'm supposed to do this, yet it just doesn't feel like it's growing or there's any real fruit from this. And so I remember I was sitting in the parking lot of my apartment, and I remember so many times I had prayed, please open these doors, Father, please open these doors. But this one particular day, I just prayed, okay, whatever door you open, I'll go through. Which is scary because he could just do anything with that.
Right.
He could do it anyways, but it was all of a sudden, okay. It wasn't that I wasn't willing to do that before. I just wasn't even aware of it. And aware to ask that or to say that to him. And it was right around that same week or two span that Michael had asked me to come demo a worship song. And I'd grown up in church leading worship off and on, and of course my dad was a worship pastor, but I'd never really, it had been a long time since I had led. I loved to worship, but it had been a long time since I led, so it was just a beautiful transition into that. I was nervous because, again, I feel like I come with a lot of baggage, and I've made some bad decisions in my life, and darkness has absolutely swallowed me up through some of this. And but the Lord has been very gracious to me and used my story. I don't know anyone who hasn't gone through a dark time, so I don't stand on the stage ever having it all together. I'm standing there because He's called me to do it, and I'm just going to keep showing up and doing it. And I love Him, and I love His people, and I love to worship. So
then Michael and you just kind of...
So yeah, we started writing. He would kind of... he's got a company called the Rain Collective. It's kind of a big group of writers, and he invited me to be part of it, and took us all on a writing trip to the mountains in Colorado. I said yes to that very quickly.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, if you're listening, I'm available.
Yes. Me too. Again. Round two. And on that trip, I sat in a room with. We would do a morning write and an afternoon write, and then in the nighttime we'd film all the songs that had been written that day. So one of the days, Michael Farron, James Galbraith of the Dustin Smith, James Galbraith, and I sat in a room. And wrote a song called "Lift My Eyes."
I've got it pulled up.
Yep.
So
it's
awesome.
the first song, on this EP.
Oh, it's so awesome.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it was definitely, it was an amazing co-write. It came out so quickly, which you always know those songs are really special when they just come out like that. And that we started leading at our church, and that's kind of the first, the video that we made of that song from that trip is what Integrity saw about 7 or 8 months later. And so I get a call from Adrian Thompson, and hey, would you like to have lunch? And he's my A&R of Integrity. And, and it just kept going from there.
Wow. And so that's just been, how long ago was that?
So, so it was not this past spring, but the one before is when I started meeting with Integrity, and we thought, okay, let's just start writing a record. Let's kind of see. I mean, there was nothing real set in stone, but we started the writing process, a little over a year ago. And it kind of went through the fall, and then around the winter time we started tracking in the studio with Michael Farron, produced it, and finished that up by the springtime. And ever since, it's been marketing, and I'm now very anxious to get out on the road. That's really where my heart
radio
is.
tour coming up here.
I'm so excited.
Excellent. Well, before we go too far, let's go back to your writing process. And so, because since our Song Revolution podcast audience is primarily aspiring Christian songwriters,
I love that.
What's the songwriting process like for you? You've done it a long time as an indie. Now you're doing it at this level with amazing people.
Yes.
So,
there's been many different phases of my writing. So I started out 5 or 6 years old on a piano, taking piano lessons, and I figured out that though taking lessons was important, it gave me the basics, but what I started to realize I enjoyed was just making up stuff. Instead of practicing my scales.
Of course. True creative.
Yeah. So though it would, impress the teacher, she's like, well, you really need to do your homework though. And it really is true. I mean, to master your craft and stuff, you need to know the basics. You need to know what you're doing. But I enjoyed making up stuff. And for a long time, it was just music. And then probably around my teenage years, I started writing little songs. And I remember I could not write anything past 90 seconds. Like, everything was a 90-second song. But over time, I just kept at it. I never felt like a really strong writer by myself. I have a lot of friends in this town who just can sit by themselves and are brilliant. But I've definitely grown much more sitting in rooms with people. When I first kind of moved back here and started sitting in rooms with someone like a Michael Farron or James Galbraith or Tony.
Yeah.
I was
Tony.
Yes, I just remember I sweat a lot. I got so nervous, and then I would usually bring food, just in case I didn't have anything brilliant to throw out there. I would be eating something.
There you go.
I'm like, I'm sorry guys, I don't have
Gain
anything to say
a
right
pound
now.
or two.
Yeah, through co-writing. It took me a while to just start being comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I'm like, I wasn't really the best in the room, but I learned something every time I sat in a room with these people. It really is who you sit in a room with, and I will say I've been very blessed to be able to sit in rooms with some amazing writers, and then some writers who are a little bit more where I'm at, and you learn kind of like which one of you is going to really lead the co-write and your strengths and weaknesses. Yeah. Great writers, sometimes they're just good at everything. I've got a lot of friends like that, but for me, melody is a strength. I can do melodies all day, every day.
Okay.
Lyrics are a little bit. I love to be a part of creating the story and the feel of it, but really figuring out how to put that in 4 or 5 words can be a little tricky for me.
Yes.
So I love to sit in rooms with really strong lyricists. Yeah.
So do you get melodic hooks?
I do, yeah. Those come, and I think it really goes back to my real early days of learning how to play the piano, and whether I was singing or not, hooks and melodies and stuff are just kind of ingrained in me.
All right, spin one out right now.
Yeah. Oh gosh. If you really want me to, I will. I don't know if it'll make Integrity proud.
Well, there are all kinds of hooks, right? I mean, and I think that's one of the things that we talk about a lot with the people that follow us, is just that you do need an incredible lyric hook, but you've got to marry that with an equally incredible melodic hook, so that comes easier for you.
Much easier for me. Yeah.
So if you look at a phrase, then it kind of suggests a melody.
It does, and sometimes it's, well, what is the phrase saying? That kind of influences how I would create the melody, and then even just the way the words fall, and there's endless things you can do with. If you give me a line of 8 or 9 words, I mean, there's even just the way that you settle the rhythm on different words or syllables. I mean, you can totally change it. Yeah. It's fascinating to me.
You could put the emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Yeah,
and
exactly. And it's like, whoa.
Well, you've done a masterful job. You and Michael and James and Jessica. Jessica
Campbell.
And Tony.
Tony a lot. Love me some Tony.
So you've just done a masterful job, and I know the people out there will absolutely just relish this album. This is one that I know that I'm going to go back to again and again and again.
Yay!
And this will be the one that stays on repeat.
That's awesome.
Well, do you have any, as we kind of wrap up? Yeah. Do you have any encouraging words for the people that might be listening, whether they're aspiring songwriters, singer-songwriters such as you, but maybe their eyes are on the prize that you've now won.
Never thought I'd win after all these years. It's such a God thing. It really is. But if I could, two things, and they're just very simple and common sense, but just don't give up. Like, just don't give up. I have friends in this town who it happened for them as soon as they moved here. Doors flying open left and right, deals, and now they are just doing incredibly. And then for other people, it took a decade or two, like similar to my story.
Or not at all.
Or not at all. But if you quit, you for sure aren't gonna get where you want to go. So, and then and sometimes it's about okay, well, your perspective on okay, what are you really reaching for? Do you really want to do? If you really want to be a top dog kind of a songwriter, how many hours are you putting into it? You've got to put your hours into it. I mean, it doesn't just happen. That's one thing that Michael has taught me is that, and I will not phrase it the way he does, but some people like wait for inspiration. I used to do that. I was like, if I'm not feeling inspired, then I don't have anything to offer. But chase it, go after it. And yeah, sometimes you leave a co-write. I've left so many where I was like, that song does not work at all, at least not for me, or we just could not get anywhere. But okay, that's okay. Try again, whether if it's with that person, or maybe that's just not the right chemistry in the room for you, and you need to try a different group of people. Add a third person into your co-write. But if you really want it, you got to put your hours into it.
That's great. Yeah. That is great advice.
Yeah.
I'll give you $10 for saying that. I drill that into my people.
Even any job. Think of a ballerina. All the years and hours and the day to day, and even just, I love ballet. So I'm thinking they do bar work, which is 5 steps over and over and over, and it's like it's about the basics, and you go from there. So
that is so good. So. Are there things that you like to read? You're not, if I'm hearing you correctly, the lyric thing isn't the strongest.
Not the strongest,
But are there things that you like to read? Other than the Bible, we love the Bible.
Other than the Bible, okay, if I'm really honest, okay, I love Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
Yes.
Harry Potter.
I love Harry
Potter.
I love creative, fun, magical stories.
Cool. Well, I may have to edit that out. I probably just lost a bunch of my people. There's mixed reviews on whether you should read them or not. But that's cool. That's cool. What about music? Like, since you're more into the melody.
Yeah. I go-to melody. It's such a wide range. I'm a huge Adele fan. Like, I'm just mesmerized by it. Yes. But even like a big influence for me growing up and what kind of pushed me into storytelling was Michael W. Smith. His very early Go West Young Man. I mean, those real early albums just kind of opened a whole new world of music and stuff. I was used to praise and worship on Sundays with my dad and stuff, but some of his early stuff was just very just engaging and moving to me.
So your dad is still present.
Very much so.
Very present in your life and ministry and your heart.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. Alisa Turner, what a delight. And I hate that our time's kind of drawn to a close, but you've got more interviews today.
Yes, I do.
Getting ready for the big radio tour. Yep. Tell us real quickly where you're going to be.
So we'll be in the Northeast. I know random bits of it. Delaware, New York City, Boston, New Jersey, all around that area. And we'll be in the Northeast for a week, then we come home for a week, and then another week on the Southeast, and it's just back and forth until we've made our way around the country.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. Well, we sure hope that goes well.
Thank you.
It probably will already have occurred by the time this podcast is released, so we'll do a follow-up.
Awesome.
What is your favorite way of people interacting with you? We're going to have all your social in the show notes, but for you personally, what's the way that you like to communicate with your fans?
Probably it's not as convenient for some people, but probably my absolute favorite is after a show. I love to spend time with people, so if I'm ever doing a show, I'm the person that's going to stick around until they kick us out. But if it's not out on the road, it's social media, Instagram, Facebook pages. I try my very best to stay connected with messages or replies or things like that. There's such a huge reason of why I'm even doing this and sharing my story. So very thankful for their support.
Wow. Well, I'd like to just wrap up by taking a moment just to thank you for being here
you're
and
welcome.
To acknowledge you just for who you are, for the presence of Jesus in your life. There's just such an encouraging, despite all of the tragedy and the things that you've gone through. Romans 8, we go back again and again. We don't understand how God redeems that stuff, but He certainly is in that process with you, with Jaime, and London, and your dad, and you know. I just want to thank you and acknowledge you for who you are and the gift that you are to the body of Christ and to the world, to everyone who hears and encounters you as a person. So thank you so much, and we certainly pray for God's continued blessing and anointing, and we celebrate you with your new self-titled release, Alisa Turner. Thanks so much.
Thanks for being here today for the Song Revolution podcast from Nashville Christian Songwriters. We exist to empower you and to bring you some of the greatest inspiration, insights, and important people from the Christian music world to help you write your best and to be heard as the songwriter that you were born to be. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us over on Twitter and Instagram, and connect with us through our Facebook group called Successful Christian Songwriters. Until next time, I'm John Chisum calling you to a Song Revolution.